Chronicles of Evimora, the place where screams learn to hunt. The first scream struck them like a blade. Savael felt the air harden against his cheek. He turned instinctively, but the scream had already passed, cutting a thin line beneath his left eye before burying itself in the cliff behind him. Stone exploded. The 5 Faelin dropped as fragments hissed over their heads. Silence returned. Not peaceful silence, the kind that waited. Savael pressed 2 fingers beneath the cut. Dark blood shimmered against his light purple skin. Behind him, 2 enormous tails rose over his shoulders. Each ended in a large spike and a 4-fingered hand, the clawed digits opening and closing as if they had minds of their own. One tail drew an arrow from the quiver crossing his back. The other reached for his folded bow. His ordinary hands unsheathed twin daggers. All 4 weapons were ready before the last stone struck the ground. That scream came from inside the mountain, Nemi sent through selective veiling. The Danu crouched on the branch of a black-rooted tree, no wider than Savael's wrist. She was barely half his weight, her green and pink patterned skin nearly disappearing among the wet leaves. A thin, whip-like tail curled behind her. Its dagger point glistened with venom. From beneath each forearm extended a slender, flexible growth of bone and dense tissue, ending in a hooked spike. The elbow extensions moved with the faint restlessness of hunting serpents. "There is no living mind inside the mountain," Vaark replied. The Iskari stood at the mouth of the ravine, pale beneath the violet moonlight. Frost patterns traced his shoulders and throat. His twin tails dragged across the stone behind him, each ending in a hardened spike angled outward at nearly 90 degrees. He had extended his awareness through open hearkening. It returned empty. No thoughts, no emotions, no conscious presence. Yet another scream trembled somewhere beneath their feet. This one belonged to a child. The sound began as a whimper, rose into a terrified cry, and passed through the mountain without weakening. The ravine walls flexed. Trees bent toward them. Rain stopped in mid-air. Every suspended droplet flattened into a silver disk. Orrika threw herself forward. Her yellow-orange body twisted, and the enormous Phora crystal boulder at the end of her single tail swung over her head. The crystal struck the ground. A thunderous impact shattered the disks of rain before they could launch. Thousands of droplets burst outward, slashing bark from the trees and slicing shallow lines across Orrika's arms. She remained braced over the crater, tail crystal half buried in stone. A grunt escaped her throat. It was only one rough syllable of pain, but the ravine heard it. The sound became visible. A bronze ripple rolled out from Orrika's mouth, circled the 5 warriors, then curved sharply back toward them. "Down," Savael commanded. Vaark slammed both tail spikes into the cliff. He kicked away from the stone and swung across the path as the bronze ripple returned. His hooked tails held him suspended, while his body struck Orrika sideways. They tumbled clear. The ripple passed through the space where she had been standing, and cut the trunk of the black-rooted tree cleanly in half. Nemi leapt before the falling branches could take her, her tail wrapped around Savael's upper arm. She used him as a pivot, spun through the air, and landed soundlessly against the cliff face, fingers and toes spread against the wet stone. The 2 poisoned extensions beneath her elbows coiled close to her ribs. "You nearly killed us by grunting," she told Orrika. The Driad rose, dragging her crystal from the crater. "I will apologize more quietly next time." Rhun's amusement touched all 4 of their minds. The Pyrathis was tall, though not as broad as Savael. His skin held the dark red of heated metal, broken by ember-like markings that pulsed along his neck and arms. His 2 tails were extraordinarily long and straight. Hardened spikes protruded along their upper ridges, each smaller than the one before it, ending in massive spear points, nearly as long as Nemi's torso. Rhun carefully pressed his lips together. His amusement deepened. "Do not laugh," Vaark warned him. That nearly made it worse. Rhun turned away from them, shoulders trembling. Even silent laughter carried emotion through the shared mental veil. Nemi responded with a flash of murderous irritation. Savael looked toward the mountain. The entrance had once been an Aether Point. Its arch remained visible beneath centuries of mineral growth. Symbols from the Age of Unification ran around its circumference, carved when the Faelin had still called themselves Avasi. The symbols were not decorative. They were instructions. Alignment, intent, resonance, Phora. But someone had gouged a deep spiral through them. Blackness had grown inside the wound. Nithra. It spread through the arch in branching veins, drinking the violet moonlight before it could enter the passage. 3 Aether Point watchers had vanished here. Then a family of Kovani travelers. Then an Orrika sent to investigate. No bodies had been recovered. Only their voices, screaming from inside the mountain. "We enter without sound," Savael sent. "Not a breath through the mouth. No impact you cannot control. No vocal casting unless death is already upon us." Orrika lifted her crystal tail free of the ground. "With this group, death is rarely far away." Savael tightened his mental veil around the others. Then the 5 tribes entered the mountain together. The tunnel remembered footsteps. Faint impressions moved across the floor ahead of them, translucent shapes, walking the same path again and again. A Kovani woman carried a child against her chest. A smaller figure followed, holding the back of her cloak. Their bodies were only pale distortions in the air, but their terror remained fresh. The child stumbled. Her mother turned. The memory vanished. A moment later, the child's scream raced down the tunnel. Savael saw it before he heard it. A narrow line of compressed air tore toward them, dragging dust into its spinning body. One of his tail hands unfolded the bow. The other knocked an arrow and pulled the string. His ordinary hands kept both daggers pointed forward. The scream reached him, his tail released. The arrow struck the center of the sound. Its Phora-charged head flared blue. The compressed scream split into 2 shrieking currents. Savael ducked between them. The currents struck the walls and carved glowing trenches through the rock. The arrow continued into the darkness. Something caught it. Not a hand. A shape stepped forward, its body assembled from overlapping moments of terror. The outline of the missing Kovani mother formed its torso. A watcher's face stretched across one shoulder. Several mouths opened along its arms, each frozen in a different expression of pain. The arrow protruded from its chest. The creature looked down at it. Then every mouth inhaled. "Move," Nemi sent. The creature screamed in 6 stolen voices. The tunnel became teeth. Blades of pressured air erupted from the floor, walls and ceiling. Savael's tail hands fired again, while his daggers struck aside the nearest distortions. One dagger chipped as it met a blade made from the last breath of a dying Faelin. Orrika charged directly into the storm. Her crystal tail swung low, smashing through 3 air blades and striking the creature in the legs. The impact burst its lower body apart. The mouths continued screaming. The upper half dragged itself over the floor by its hands. Nemi ran along the wall. One elbow extension whipped forward, its poisonous spike piercing the watcher's face on the creature's shoulder. Her opposite extension struck beneath its arm. She crossed both limbs and ripped away a mass of compressed memory. There was no blood, only sounds. Coughing, crying, a baby's first involuntary gasp, the joyful exhalation of someone seeing Mora rise over the horizon. Every fragment struck the stone and became something physical. A cough burst into shards. A sob formed a heavy chain. The infant's gasp became a sphere of expanding pressure. Vaark buried both tail spikes in the ceiling. He lifted his entire body from the ground as the sphere passed beneath him. Still hanging, he pulled his tails inward. The spikes tore parallel trenches through the ceiling and released a sheet of stone. Rhun stepped beneath it. His long tails shot upward. The large terminal spikes struck the slab from opposite sides, pinning it above his head. The smaller spikes along his tails ground into the rock, holding its weight across dozens of points. With a violent twist of his hips, he hurled the slab forward. It crushed the crawling creature against the floor. The screaming stopped. For 3 heartbeats, nothing moved. Then a laugh escaped Rhun. It was quiet, a short, surprised burst of pleasure. The sound rolled from his throat as a glowing orange ring. Rhun's eyes widened. The ring expanded. It passed harmlessly through the 5 warriors. Then it touched the remains beneath the slab. Every stolen mouth began laughing with him. The stone lifted. The creature unfolded from beneath it, taller than before, its body now bending in impossible directions. Laughter poured from it. Not joyful laughter, predatory laughter. The tunnel shook with each burst. Rhun's expression hardened. That is deeply offensive. The creature lunged. Rhun met it with both tails. The great spikes pierced its torso, but instead of stopping, the creature split around them. Its arms wrapped around the tails and raced toward Rhun like shadows sliding along spears. Savael's bowstring snapped. An arrow flashed past Rhun's ear and severed one arm. Another struck the creature's throat. Savael's tail hands fired with such speed that 3 arrows appeared to cross the tunnel at once, while his ordinary hands met a second pair of limbs with his daggers. He cut one wrist, blocked a descending claw, drove his forehead into the stretched face of the Kovani mother. The creature bent backward, then snapped forward and bit into his shoulder. Savael grunted. The sound escaped before he could stop it. A blue distortion burst from his mouth like the edge of an axe. It passed through the creature, then through Savael. Pain opened across his chest. His own voice had cut him. Nemi caught his collar with her tail and ripped him backward. Orrika roared. The deliberate force of the sound struck the tunnel like a falling tower. Stone buckled around her. Her crystal tail came down. The blow crushed the creature, the floor and part of the mountain beneath them. All 5 warriors dropped through the rupture. They fell into an ancient chamber. Vaark's tails struck first. Both hooked spikes bit into a hanging pillar. His body jerked to a stop, one hand catching Nemi by the wrist as she fell past him. Nemi's tail snapped around Orrika's forearm. Orrika swung her crystal boulder beneath herself, smashing it into the wall. The enormous weight lodged in the stone. Savael caught one of Orrika's horns with a tail hand. His second tail seized Rhun. The 5 Faelin hung in a living chain above a black abyss. Something breathed beneath them. The breath carried no sound. It pulled. Their bodies tilted toward the darkness. Savael felt Phora being drawn from his blood. The chamber was enormous, round, and impossibly deep. Rings of ancient Avasi markings covered its walls. At the center, suspended over the abyss, hung a sphere made from thousands of interwoven lines of air. Sounds moved within it. Every cry from every missing traveler, every grunt of pain, every frantic breath. The sphere had collected them all. Below it clung a Noctyra. It was larger than any Savael had seen depicted in the Echo archives. 4 taloned legs encircled the underside of the sphere. Tattered wings folded around its body. Black skin swallowed what little moonlight entered through cracks above. Violet bone spines pulsed along its back. Its tail hung into the abyss, barbs twitching. The Noctyra had not created the chamber. It had found it, fed it, taught it hunger. The creature's hollow eyes turned toward them. It could not hear their minds, but it felt their Phora. The Noctyra opened its wings. The stolen voices began screaming. The chain broke. Vaark released the pillar as a wall of sound tore through it. Orrika ripped her crystal free. All 5 dropped. Rhun drove both tail spikes into the chamber wall. The smaller spikes along their length struck in sequence, slowing his descent in a shower of molten sparks. Vaark did the same on the opposite side. His shorter, angled spikes chopped into the wall like ice axes. He swung his body, kicked away, and landed on a narrow ring of stone surrounding the abyss. Nemi fell toward the Noctyra. She twisted in the air. Both elbow extensions snapped outward. One hooked around a strand of the sound sphere. The second pierced the membrane of the Noctyra's wing. Her tail spike drove into its shoulder. Venom flooded the wound. The Noctyra convulsed. Its wing slammed shut around her. Nemi vanished inside it. Savael hit the stone ring and rolled. His tails acted before his hands. One seized his bow, the other gathered 3 arrows. His ordinary hands discarded the broken daggers and drew 2 crescent-shaped blades from his belt. He ran. His tails fired over his shoulders, while he vaulted onto the Noctyra's foreleg. 1 arrow struck its throat. 1 entered the base of a spine. The 3rd passed through the wing, imprisoning Nemi. Savael's blades cut a crossing path through black flesh. The wound opened. Nemi exploded out of it. She landed against Savael's back, pushed off, and launched herself toward the sound sphere. The Noctyra's tail rose from the abyss. Its barbs struck for her. Orrika intercepted them. Her crystal boulder met the tail with a detonation of violet sparks. The force threw her across the ring. She struck the wall hard enough to leave a crater. A cry tore from her throat. The chamber captured it. A second Orrika formed from the sound. The echo Driad appeared beside the real one, made from orange light and compressed agony. Its false crystal tail swung toward her skull. Orrika rolled beneath it. The boulder struck the wall and broke loose a section of ancient carving. Orrika's eyes narrowed. It copies pain. The echo attacked again. Orrika let it come. At the final instant, she wrapped her arms around its torso. The false tail continued its swing. Orrika pivoted. The echo's crystal struck the Noctyra's foreleg instead. Black bone shattered. The creature lurched. Orrika headbutted her double and drove her real crystal through its chest. The echo burst into the sound of her own scream. Above them, the sphere grew. Every noise feeds it, Vaark sent. He was running horizontally along the wall, his twin tails striking and releasing in alternating rhythm. Each angled spike carried his weight for half a heartbeat before the other found purchase. The Noctyra swept a taloned limb toward him. Vaark released both tails. He dropped beneath the strike, turned once in the air, and drove both spikes into the limb from below. The hooks held. He pulled his body upward and landed on the Noctyra's leg. His mouth opened. A single pale tone emerged. Savael. It was not a word. It carried no message. It was alignment given sound. The moisture in the chamber rushed toward him. Frost raced over the Noctyra's limb. The ice followed Vaark's intent, filling cracks in the black bone, spreading into the joints, and locking them together. The tone disturbed more than water. The entire chamber shuddered. Frost formed around every stored voice in the sphere, briefly giving each sound a visible shape. Thousands of screams became curved blades. Hundreds of sobs became hanging chains. Dozens of dying breaths became spears pointed in every direction. Savael understood. The chamber does not preserve sound. He drove a blade into the Noctyra's neck. It preserves the shape that emotion gives sound. The Noctyra struck him. Savael flew from its body and landed at the edge of the abyss. His bow disappeared into darkness. A tail hand caught the lip of stone. His body swung over emptiness. The Noctyra's barbed tail rose below him. The point punched through his thigh. Pain detonated through his mind. Savael's jaws clamped shut. The Noctyra pulled him deeper. The barb twisted. His throat tightened. He could feel the scream coming. If it escaped, the chamber would shape it into another weapon. He looked up. Nemi was climbing the frozen strands of the sphere. Orrika fought two echoes of herself. Vaark was trapped beneath the Noctyra's wing. Rhun stood before a crack in the chamber wall, through which a thin beam of Evi's golden amber light struggled to enter. Savael stopped resisting the scream. Rhun. The Pyrathis felt his intention. "That is reckless," Rhun replied. "Yes." "Good." Savael threw his head back. He screamed. The sound ripped from him with every fragment of pain the barb had driven into his body. The chamber seized it. The scream became a colossal blue spear. It formed above Savael, its point aimed toward his own chest. Rhun moved. His long tails struck the wall. Every smaller spike along their lengths dug into the stone. The tails bent, storing tremendous force. His mouth opened. "Ra! Corn!" Heat answered him. The sound burst from his throat as a red-orange shockwave. The thin beam of moonlight bent. Stone softened. The spikes along his tails glowed white. The chamber trembled around the casting. Rhun released his tails. They snapped straight. The great terminal spikes struck Savael's blue scream spear from either side. The force turned it. The weapon rotated in mid-air. Its point swung away from Savael and drove through the Noctyra's chest. The creature convulsed. Nithra sprayed across the chamber as black mist. Savael fell from its tail. Orrika's crystal caught him before the abyss did. The Noctyra shrieked. Its voice was not Faelin. It carried no thought, only collective hunger. The chamber could not understand it. For the first time, the sound sphere fractured. Nemi reached its center. Inside, she found the missing child. The little Kovani girl hung curled within the woven voices, alive but barely conscious. Her silver blue eyes opened as Nemi approached. "Mama?" Nemi drove both elbow spikes into the strands surrounding her. No. Venom entered the living Phora, woven through the chamber. The effect was immediate. The sphere spasmed. Every strand tightened. Nemi's poison could stop a heart. Here, it slowed the chamber's reactions. Its woven sounds became heavy, sluggish. "But I'm taking you out of this place." She cut the child free. Below them, the Noctyra tore Savael's scream spear from its chest. The wound began closing. Phora flowed from the chamber into it. Vaark broke free of the wing. "Phora is sustaining it." "Then Phora cannot be what destroys it," Savael answered. The 5 warriors understood together. Light was not Phora. Phora reacted. Phora sustained. Light decided. Evi shone through the crack behind Rhun. Mora's violet glow entered through a fissure high above Nemi. No single Faelin could align with both. They did not need one. There were 5 minds, 5 bodies, 5 histories that had once been one people. Savael opened his hearkening completely, not merely to his companions, to every trapped memory within the chamber. Terror flooded him, love, pain, the final thoughts of the missing watchers, the Kovani mother's desperate determination to protect her children, the Ori scribe's refusal to allow the chamber to consume the truth of what had happened here. Savael shared it all. Orrika braced her crystal against the floor. Vaark anchored both tails into the wall. Rhun spread his spiked tails across the crack, glowing with Evi's light. Nemi held the child against her chest and buried her poisoned extensions in the heart of the sphere. Their voices rose. Not speech, not names, 5 tones shaped around a single intention. Savael began low. Vahili. Orrika joined him, her voice deep enough to send fractures across the floor. Rumasha. Vaark's note entered like cold wind through narrow stone. Sai! Rhun's voice ignited the air. Resk Balhoma. Nemi's tone was the smallest, the sharpest. It passed through every other note without breaking. Ei fal yeth. The chamber responded. The sounds of the missing Faelin pulled free of the sphere. They did not scream. For one final instant, every trapped voice became visible as a ribbon of light. Blue, violet, gold, green, white. They spiraled around the Noctyra. The creature tried to drink them, but the tones had aligned with more than Phora. Evi's light entered through Rhun's tails. Mora's light passed through Nemi and the child. Golden amber and violet met around the Noctyra without entering any single Faelin. The creature's black skin began to burn. It threw itself toward the abyss. Orrika swung. Her Phora crystal boulder crushed its rear leg. Vaark launched from the wall, both tail spikes hooked beneath its jaw, dragging its head upward. Rhun's twin tails crossed around its torso, the many smaller spikes forming a cage. Nemi tore herself and the child free of the collapsing sphere. Savael seized the Noctyra's largest glowing spine with all 4 hands. His ordinary hands wrapped around the bone. His tail hands closed above them. With a roar that split the chamber from floor to ceiling, he broke the spine free. The roar became a wave. The chamber shaped it. Savael shaped the chamber back. The wave struck the Noctyra and held it beneath the intersecting moonlight. Its skin cracked. Violet fire erupted through the wounds. Its wings became ash. Its hollow eyes filled with light. Then the Noctyra came apart without a final sound. The abyss swallowed what remained. For several breaths, the 5 warriors stood inside the ruins of the oldest terror any of them had ever faced. No echoes formed, no screams returned. The chamber had released them. Nemi carried the child across the broken stone. The little girl stared at the 5 bloodied Faelin surrounding her. Her gaze settled on Rhun's burned skin, Vaark's frost-covered tails, Orrika's enormous crystal, Savael's wounded leg, and the venom still shining along Nemi's elbow spikes. A tiny sound escaped her. Not a scream, a laugh. Everyone froze. The laugh moved gently through the chamber. It became a cluster of luminous shapes like small, winged spree. They circled the child once, climbed toward the open cracks, and vanished into the moonlight. Rhun looked at Nemi. May I laugh now? No. Orrika's amusement entered their shared veil. Vaark lowered his head. Savael's shoulders began to shake. One by one, the 5 warriors surrendered. Their laughter filled the shattered chamber. The walls trembled. Dust danced. Light bent into impossible colors. But nothing hunted them. Nothing screamed back. And in the generations that followed, the Faelin never rebuilt the ancient Aether Point. They sealed the mountain and carved a warning into the stone outside. It was written without sound. It needed no voice to be understood. Pain remembered without mercy becomes a weapon. Pain shared becomes something else. From that night onward, the Faelin who knew the truth stopped calling silence empty. They called it mercy.